Losing a sports franchise is constantly a threat among those cities that have them, whether it's through inadequate facilities, bad ownership, or bad fan support. And many times teams do indeed get lost, but sometimes they only almost do. This is sports franchises that were almost lost or relocated. First is the New Orleans Saints. In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, the damage to the Louisiana Superdome from the storm and being used as a shelter was so severe that the stadium would be unusable for an entire NFL season. The Saints would end up playing games in Baton Rouge, San Antonio, and even New York City for a home game. Even before the storm, in August of 2005, then Saints owner Tom Benson was in tense negotiations with the state over the Louisiana Superdome. After the damage to the Superdome was realized, a potential break in the lease was explored by owner Tom Benson. However, at the insistence of then NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, a deal would be reached to restore the Superdome, and this move, most likely to San Antonio, never happened. Second on this list we go to Chicago, where, in the late 1980s, the White Sox almost left for Florida. By the late 1980s, original Comiskey Park was approaching 80 years old, while at the same time a new stadium was being built in St. Petersburg, Florida, just outside of Tampa. This dome, which would first be known as the Florida Suncoast Dome, now known as Tropicana Field, was being built without a binding commitment from a team to move there or from MLB for an expansion team. Therefore, it could be used as leverage from ownership to get a new stadium built in Chicago. After voters in Chicago would reject a proposal to build a new stadium there, a tentative agreement was made to move the White Sox to St. Petersburg. However, this agreement would allow Illinois and Chicago a chance to come up with their own stadium deal if it could be met by a deadline, and the state would come through in the very final minutes with a new stadium deal in what would become New Comiskey Park, presently Guaranteed Rate Field, where the White Sox play to this day, while Tampa would have to end up waiting until 1998 to finally get a team. Next on this list was not a team that was almost lost by relocation, rather being contracted. In 2001, MLB owners voted 28-2 to get rid of two teams, the Montreal Expos and the Minnesota Twins, both having aging venues. It did not appear the Expos would be an issue in this matter. However, with the Twins, they had 1 year remaining on their stadium lease, and in Hennepin County, Minnesota, an injunction would be placed to force the team to stay for 1 more year. Because there was basically no way MLB could operate with an odd number of teams via the schedule if just the Expos were eliminated, the whole plan was scrapped, and the Twins were saved. And while the Expos would ultimately move away from Montreal, the Twins would ultimately stay, and eventually get a new ballpark in Target Field, where they play to this day. Next on this list are the NBA's Sacramento Kings. In 2011, the Maloof family, which owned the Kings, would begin preparations to try to move the Sacramento Kings out of Sacramento. First, by trademarking the name Los Angeles Royals or Anaheim Royals, though this was initially likely to get Sacramento to come to the table for a new arena, and there would be negotiations over replacing the aging Sleep Train Arena in Sacramento. However, a deal would not be reached initially, and the Maloofs would try to sell to new owners located in Seattle, which had recently lost the Sonics franchise to Oklahoma City. However, a new ownership group from Sacramento would arise and would get in a bidding war with the Seattle group. Eventually, the two sides would have to present their case to the NBA as to why they should have the team. Ultimately, the NBA would vote in favor of the Sacramento ownership group, and eventually new ownership would have a new arena built for the Kings in the Golden One Center at a cost of over $500 million, where they play currently today. And finally on this list are the New England Patriots. In 1992, James Orthwein would purchase the New England Patriots, with Orthwein being from St. Louis and realizing that there was now a vacancy in the city when the Cardinals would move away from there a year prior, along with the TWA Dome being under construction in St. Louis. Orthwein would try to move the team to St. Louis. However, he would have to do so by breaking the team's stadium lease at Foxborough Stadium 8 years early. Orthwein would already have a concept name, color scheme, and merchandise for what he wanted to become the St. Louis Stallions. However, Robert Kraft, who owned the lease at Foxborough Stadium, would not allow Orthwein to break it, and ultimately would counter with an offer to buy the team, rather than accept an expensive buyout option. He ultimately would end up purchasing the team in 1994, and has been the owner ever since. the Patriots would play out their lease at Foxborough Stadium, and in 2002 would begin play at the privately funded Gillette Stadium, where they play currently. So those are 5 of the almost relocated or lost teams. Those are not all of them, however those are some of the closest that have come to being such. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.